Hello, NATR 346. This is a quick, maybe 15-minute talk to support the homework assignment regarding water rights and also to tell a little story about a particular point of diversion near the former location of the former Auburn Dam, which I think you'll find interesting, I hope. So I want to start with the exercise with water rights, going into the state's database of where all these water rights are held, and to go into layers, get rid of the administrative boundaries, and zoom into the American River. And what you're interested here is where are the water rights? And if you zoom in close enough, you'll see these boxes start to pop up. And this is where you can find out about all the diversions that have been approved, that people have rights to the American River water from Folsom Dam down to the American River. There's a particular point of diversion that I want to tell you about today because it does encapsulate some of the history of the Auburn Dam, which I think is interesting in its own right. So here we have, I don't know if you're familiar with this area, here's Auburn, and here is the Auburn Canyon Overlook area and some parks here that you can get down and access these trails and get down to these points of diversion. I'm going to take a look at this one, view additional details. Sometimes that doesn't work, by the way, and you have to click around and try again. I don't know why, but it worked this time. But so here we are, and getting the information about this particular point of diversion. We see that the direct diversion amount is 1,225. No units there. That's kind of frustrating. I think the people that built this database should have taken this class, maybe. What good is this number without a unit? Is that drops of water per decade? Buckets of water? Who knows? You got to find out later as you dig down here, and in their infinite wisdom, they put the unit type, the point of diversion unit, as cubic feet per second. Awesome. So this shows that the Placer County Water Agency, that's the agency that supplies water for Roseville and Rockland and a lot of Placer County, has a right to divert 1,225 cubic feet per second from this point. And what that diversion looks like and how it was built and what it looks like now is kind of interesting, and what I want to focus on in this talk. There's a couple of reasons why this particular point of diversion is interesting. If you look at it in Google Earth, this is where it is. Here's Auburn. And I don't know how many folks have been to this railroad park here in the overview of the Auburn Dam, or what was going to be the Auburn Dam. There you can access paved roads down to this site. This is what the diversion looks like now. And this is a very interesting construction. What the Placer County Water Agency did was construct a system that diverts the American River water along this pathway here. You see the rapids, and then if you look closer, you see these light-colored boxes. Those are screens, and those screens allow water to fall down through the screens. And they had dug out a large pit here and put pumps in, and then so this is a pump house. So water that goes in the river falls on the screen, goes into a pump house, and gets pumped out of the canyon to feed Roseville and Placer, other areas of Placer County with water. The other feature of this sort of unique point of diversion is these rapids. And that those are obviously artificial constructed rapids that were made as part of the project to get the project approved, to have this sort of recreational feature. And I guess if you're sort of a short sports kayaker, these are sort of awesome to shoot got down and then get out and walk up and enjoy the rapids. You can also, again, access this sort of unique spot just by parking up by the Prospect Park and getting on some of these trails. These are really steep roads to walk down, but you can check it out. So the reason I think this is interesting is that it does tie in to historical Auburn Dam. So this is a schematic map of the American River. You've got the North Fork, the Middle Fork, and the South Fork. Existing Folsom Lake tries to dam up the whole watershed. It's about a 1,000,000-acre watershed, and the dam can only store 1,000,000 acre-feet. So if it rains a foot of water here, this dam is full. And so a long time ago it was recognized that it would be advantageous to also put in a dam here at the confluence of the North Fork and the Middle Fork. That's where the historic Auburn Dam was to be sited, and it was going to look something like this. Another view. Here's the American River, the South Fork coming into Folsom Dam, and the Middle and the North Fork would be dammed right at the confluence, so that you get a double whammy. You get to flood both of these valleys with the dam. It was going to look something like this. And this picture is a little confusing maybe, but so you see this current water feature we were just looking at. That's the diversion point for Placer County Water Agency to pull water out of the American River. This yellow line is what the shape of the dam would have been, that classic concrete concave shape of the dam. And if you're out there, if you go down there and check this area out, you can see where they were going to build the dam if you pay attention. So this is back to Google Earth view. They did all this excavating to be able to tie in the concrete dam to the hillside. When you build a dam like this, you've got to scrape off the soil and get into the competent bedrock. So that's what they were doing here. They dug all this out to get to bedrock. And they were going to build this concrete structure that basically follows my hand here. This is where the concave structure of the dam would have been. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the story of the dam, but basically due to an earthquake that occurred in the early, I think, mid-70s and other environmental studies, the dam eventually got nixed and not approved by the federal government. And so the dam was not approved and will not be built at this time. But there was a great deal of construction done on it and planning. One of the things that was done was this diversion tunnel. If you want to build a dam, you need to have a dry construction site. So the first thing they did was blast this tunnel through the mountain, build a temporary dam here, and that diverted water from this point through the tunnel out to here and leaving this stretch of the river dry as a bone. Now, what they call this temporary dam, for some reason, is called a coffer dam. This is a plan view of what it looked like when it was working. You can't see it here too well, but there was a dirt dam here that trapped the water, diverted it through this tunnel, and left this clean construction site that they were using to dig out the mountain to make room for the construction of the concrete dam. This is a nice tunnel where the water went into the tunnel. That tunnel was working for a long time after the dam project was nixed. I think, and finally in mid-2000s it was decommissioned because it's pretty much of a hazard for people to go into. This is just what the construction site looked like at one point in the project. I don't know if you're familiar with the Forest Hill Bridge, but this is a bridge that was built in anticipation of the dam being constructed and the water level of the Auburn Dam Lake being so way up high, so that you would need this 700 or so foot bridge, the Forest Hill Bridge. Forest Hill Bridge is built. It's a great bridge, but there's just no dam. There's no reservoir underneath it because the dam was never built. It's an interesting area. But this is what the construction looked like, getting ready to put the footings in, or putting the footings in for the dam. A lot of work was done, and if you go to this site now, it looks a little less raw than this. A lot of dirt is sloughed in and vegetation has grown, but you can see they call it teeth cleaning. They take a hillside like this and they want to scrape all the loose stuff so that they can tie the concrete dam into solid bedrock. And it was some historical old faults in the bedrock that were potentially active, and which created the problem with this dam construction. Here's the other side where they made it pretty far along building the bottom structure for this concrete dam to tie into. And you can see some of these features if you go up there today. So there's a point to this story, and I'll get to it. But here is a picture of the coffer dam that was built. Again, this is to trap the entire flow of the American River and have that water flow into the diversion tunnel and out the other end. In 1986, we had a very wet winter, and during that winter, the coffer dam failed. It's interesting about this event because the coffer dam was constructed in anticipation that it might fail in a heavy rain. And so it failed as designed. It took hours for the various components of the dirt dam to fall so that you didn't have a giant wave of water coming down. So this is what it looked like when it first breached. And again, it was built to fail in stages, and it failed as designed. It was super wet time, and this is what the dam looked like just as it started to fail. All this is dirt that was constructed for the temporary dam. Unfortunately, all this dirt from the coffer dam ended up washing down the river. And you can imagine what that would do to the natural bed load of the river, the salmon habitat, the gravel, wreaked havoc on it. And this is what it looked like after the dam had failed completely. This is the part of the dam still standing, and then the river kind of lazily going by and messing up and moving all this dirt along the floor. The reason this is relevant here is that the Placer County Water Agency had an appropriative right. Now you're experts on that. And that means there was a point of diversion, a POD. It's down here somewhere, literally. And they were waiting patiently for the Auburn Dam to be built, because after it was built, they were just going to put a straw in the reservoir and take out their allotment of water. Well, decades and decades passed, the dam never got built, then this failed, and about this time the whole project was about to be awash, literally like scrapped. And so Placer County said, well, great, now can we finally rebuild our point of diversion? And that is what this project is about. How do you build a modern point of diversion on this new American River that is now basically a big mud bed due to the failure of the coffer dam? This is what the old Placer County Water Agency point of diversion looked like. It basically just was a hose in the creek and a bunch of pumps to shove the water up and out of the canyon. So the way they first had to do many studies and get approvals to modify the creek. But what this is the American River downstream of the coffer dam. And I believe the tunnel was still in construction because the riverbed was dry as a bone. And so how they addressed the terrible muddy bottom of the river and the unstable bed load is they imported these massive stones and rock and lined the bottom of the American River with these rocks, some of them derived from the blasting. The blasting was done in order to make this cave, this canyon, for the water to fall into in the end. So this is the area where the diversion point is now being constructed. Obviously a very big project. When the water's running, it's going from here, it goes along here, and it gets funneled into this system where it falls down these screens into this big old vault down here and pumped out. And here on the other side is where they're building the artificial recreational rapids by laying the stones in certain ways. Big project, kind of a fascinating project. This is what it looks like when you're down there. And again, you can walk down there and play around. It's a fun place to go, actually, if you're into this kind of thing. This is what the fake rapids look like. And this is an example of the kind of higher tech screens that they're building now, that you can pull water out of a waterway with doing theoretically minimal damage to the wildlife. These are just different shots of this functioning. Here is the business end of this thing where the water comes in and is diverted over these screens, and it just feeds by gravity down to the vault and then gets pumped out. This is another view of the screens, and there's public access all along this walkway here. They kind of did a pretty good job. They really meant it to be a feature as much as they could, and there was a lot of negotiations, I guess, that went into this construction. It's kind of interesting. This is what the vault looks like underneath. So when the water comes across here, falls through these screens, it falls into this vault. Hopefully that guy will be out of there when they turn it on. And then these pretty big pumps. I mean, water's heavy, and it's got to go out a couple of thousand feet out of the canyon. And so they built these vaults and these pumps to pump it out. Big project, really interesting. You know, if you're in Roseville and you're drinking water out of the tap, you didn't know maybe that it probably came from this feature here.